When 7-year-old Emily walked up and placed her drawing on the judge's desk, a few chuckles echoed through the courtroom. But the moment the jury studied it, their faces changed, smiles vanished, and a heavy silence swept across the room like a cold wind. The moment Emily's drawing touched the judge's desk, the atmosphere shifted. At first, a few polite smiles, a chuckle or two. After all, what harm could a child's sketch possibly hold? But as the jury leaned in, their expressions stiffened. One juror dropped her pen. Another whispered, "Oh my God." Then came the collective gasp. A hush fell over the room, thick and cold. You could feel it, the realization settling in. This wasn't just a child's doodle, it was evidence. And suddenly, no one was laughing anymore. No one believed little. Emily, not at first, but that sketch, it was about to turn an entire case upside down. Emily was just 7, a quiet girl with a big imagination. She lived in a peaceful American suburb, in a house filled with love from her mother and quiet rules from her father. While other kids played outside, Emily often sat alone with her sketchbook, drawing the world around her. The tall trees, the barking dog, and even people's faces. Her drawings were her way of speaking when words weren't enough. Teachers noticed her talent early, praising her eye for detail. But only Emily knew the stories behind her sketches, stories that held secrets she wasn't ready to share. And soon, those secrets would change everything. It was a cold November night, the kind that wraps the world in quiet and darkness. Emily was fast asleep, tucked into her bed, unaware that everything she had known was about to change forever. In the stillness of the house, a sudden, terrible sound shattered the calm, a heavy thud at the bottom of the stairs. Emily's mother was found there, lying motionless, her body broken, her spirit shattered. Her father, panic flooding his voice, called 911. "She fell," he said simply. The words felt too plain, too easy to believe. But in that moment, they became the truth everyone clung to. When the first responders arrived, they found Emily's mother unconscious, bruised and battered. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but the damage was grave. The doctors worked tirelessly, hoping against hope. In those early hours, no one questioned the story told by the father. It was a tragic accident, nothing more. The police arrived to take statements. They listened to the father's account with the kind of measured professionalism you might expect. "She must have slipped," he told them. "The stairs were slippery." The neighbors murmured their condolences, believing the worst had simply been an unfortunate mishap. The house that once echoed with the gentle laughter of a mother and daughter now held an unbearable silence. Days passed, and Emily sat quietly, clutching her sketchbook, trying to make sense of the frightening quiet that had fallen over her life. But inside her, a storm was growing. Emily's drawings began to change. The light in her pictures dimmed, replaced by jagged lines and shadows, images no child should have to draw. She sketched the stairs, the exact way she remembered them that night. A picture of her mother falling, frozen in midair, a look of shock and fear on her face. But when she showed her drawing to her teacher or to a family friend, the adults simply smiled and said, "Sweetheart, sometimes accidents happen." The official ruling came swiftly: accidental fall. The authorities closed the case, their reports filing away the incident as nothing more than a tragic accident. But Emily's heart knew otherwise. There was a silence in the room, but it was filled with unsaid truths. Emily was too young to say it in words, but in her sketches the story was clear. She knew what really happened, and she was about to prove it. The courtroom had yet to hear the truth hiding in the lines of a child's drawing, the truth that would soon shake the very foundation of the case. After that terrible night, Emily seemed to disappear into herself. The lively, curious girl who once filled her sketchbook with scenes from the world around her now grew silent, withdrawn. Words became harder for her. The noise of the house, the questions from adults, she couldn't face them, but her pencil and paper remained. Drawing became her refuge, the place where her feelings found a way out when she couldn't speak them. Her sketches grew darker, more intense, filled with jagged edges and shadows that no 7-year-old should carry. Each line told a story of confusion, fear, and sadness. One afternoon, Emily's art teacher noticed something different about her latest drawing. It was a picture, unlike any she had ever seen Emily create before. The scene was haunting, her mother falling down a flight of stairs, a look of shock frozen on her face. But what caught the teacher's eye most was a figure standing at the top of the stairs. A man, large and ominous, watching silently as the fall happened. The details were unsettling. The man's shadow stretched long and dark, his expression hidden, but his presence undeniable. The teacher knew this wasn't just imagination or a child's fancy. Something in that drawing spoke of a truth Emily wasn't able to say out loud. With a heavy heart, the teacher made a difficult decision. She reported the drawing to the authorities. It wasn't an easy choice. She understood the delicacy of the situation, the potential impact on the family, and the fear that Emily might be caught in the middle of something much bigger than she could understand. But protecting a child's voice was more important. That drawing wasn't just art. It was a silent cry for help. And for the first time since that cold November night, the wheels of investigation started to turn again. What no one realized then was that Emily's quiet grief was about to become the key that unlocked the truth hidden beneath years of silence and fear. The courtroom and the world beyond were about to hear the story only a child's drawing could tell. A story no one expected, but one no one could ignore. When the authorities received Emily's drawing, they knew it couldn't be ignored. For months, the case had been closed, an unfortunate accident, the result of a simple fall, but now something was different. The detectives reopened the file, this time with fresh eyes and open minds. Emily's sketch wasn't just a child's imagination. It contained details that hadn't been reported before, details no one else seemed to notice. In the picture there was a broken vase near the stairs, a detail missing from the original investigation, and on the carpet beneath her mother, a dark smudge that looked like blood. The detectives compared the drawing to the photos from the scene. There it was, a shattered vase on the floor, carefully overlooked in the initial reports, and the blood, hidden, faint but undeniably present. Slowly, suspicion began to build. How had these signs been missed? Why had the investigation been so quick to rule? The tragedy, an accident. The focus shifted, and all eyes turned toward the father. He had been the one to call 911, the one whose story everyone had accepted without question. But now, under this new light, cracks appeared in his account. The vase wasn't just broken, it looked like it had been thrown. The blood didn't match the pattern of a simple fall. Investigators found inconsistencies in the timeline and details that didn't add up. Neighbors began to speak in hushed tones, recalling arguments and tension they had witnessed but never reported. Slowly, the picture painted by Emily's drawing began to piece itself together in a way that terrified everyone involved. A quiet home wasn't as peaceful as it seemed, and the truth hiding behind closed doors was darker than anyone had imagined. Yet through it all, Emily remained silent. Her voice finally carried not by words, but by the power of her sketch. That fragile drawing, once dismissed as a child's plaything, was now the spark that ignited a search for justice. The detectives knew that beneath the surface lay answers waiting to be uncovered. They vowed to listen carefully this time, to follow the clues wherever they might lead, and to protect the little girl whose courage had changed everything. Emily's drawing had opened a door that could never be closed again. And in the quiet halls of justice, the truth was beginning to echo louder than ever before. The arrest came quietly, but it shook the community to its core. Emily's father was taken into custody, facing serious charges no one had imagined just weeks before, but he denied everything, vehemently. "It was an accident," he insisted. "I loved my wife, I didn't hurt her." The courtroom filled with murmurs and uneasy glances, the truth now tangled in layers of pain and denial. For 7-year-old Emily, the fight was far from over, but she didn't have words to speak her truth. Instead, she would testify in the only way she knew how, through her drawings. Day after day, Emily's sketches were brought before the judge and jury. Each image told a part of the story, pieces of a puzzle the adults around her struggled to see. The courtroom was quiet as the drawings were laid out. The broken vase, the dark stain on the carpet, the looming figure at the top of the stairs. But questions filled the air. Could a child's sketch truly hold weight in the eyes of the law? Could these lines and shadows be trusted as evidence? Lawyers argued back and forth, debating the validity and reliability of Emily's art. Experts were called in to discuss children's psychology and the power of non-verbal communication. The judge listened carefully, weighing the fragile balance between empathy and legal precedent. The jury sat in silence, absorbing the images that spoke louder than words ever could. For many, the sketches pierced through the confusion, bringing clarity and a raw, emotional truth no testimony could match. But for others, doubt lingered. Was this enough to hold a man accountable? As the trial unfolded, the courtroom became a battleground for justice, truth, and belief. Emily's drawings had opened a new chapter, not just in the case, but in the way the legal system confronted the voices of its youngest and most vulnerable witnesses. And through it all, Emily remained steadfast in her quiet courage, her art speaking the words she couldn't say aloud. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear: no one could ignore the power of a child's truth anymore. After weeks of silence, after days of waiting and watching, the courtroom fell utterly still. It was time for Emily's final drawing, the one that would either break the case wide open or leave everyone grasping for answers once more. Slowly, carefully, the drawing was placed before the judge, the lawyers, and the jury. The room held its breath. At first glance, it looked like another child's sketch. Rough lines, uneven shapes, the innocent hand of a 7-year-old. But as the jury leaned closer, the true horror revealed itself. The drawing depicted the exact moment her mother fell down the stairs, but it wasn't an accident. The angle was wrong, too sharp, too violent, suggesting something far more sinister. In the image, her mother's body was tipped forward, not simply tumbling but clearly pushed. Nearby, the broken vase lay shattered, its pieces strewn in a chaotic pattern that echoed the impact. A dark smear, unmistakably blood, marked the carpet beneath. The jury gasped. One juror's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide with shock. Another swallowed hard, tears welling up before they spilled down her cheeks. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating, as the courtroom processed what this simple sketch had revealed. The truth, once hidden in shadows and denial, was now impossible to ignore. Emily's drawing didn't just tell a story, it screamed for justice. The defense lawyer tried to steady the room, reminding everyone that art could be misinterpreted, but the jurors had seen something real, something that couldn't be unseen. For the first time, Emily's silent voice echoed loudly in the courtroom. The father, sitting stoically, showed a flicker of unease, his confident facade beginning to crack. Outside the courtroom, whispers spread like wildfire. The community, once divided, now rallied behind the little girl who had dared to speak the truth without uttering a single word. Emily's courage had changed everything. In that moment, the weight of her drawing settled on everyone's shoulders, judges, lawyers, and jurors alike. It was a turning point. The scales of justice tipped, not by eyewitness accounts or hearsay, but by the quiet, unwavering truth of a child's hand. And as the gavel came down, the courtroom knew that this was more than a trial. It was a profound reminder of the power one small voice can have. Emily's sketch wasn't just a picture, it was a beacon, a call to see beyond appearances and listen with the heart, and in that call, justice found its strongest ally. The courtroom was tense as expert witnesses took the stand, their voices calm but firm. They spoke not just of drawings, but of the mind behind them. A child's mind, yes, but one showing an awareness that went far beyond her years. Psychologists explained how children like Emily could communicate trauma through images, expressing truths too painful for words. They described how Emily's sketches reflected memories locked deep within her young mind, memories that held the key to understanding what really happened that cold November night. The jurors listened intently, eyes fixed on the evidence before them, the drawings that spoke louder than any testimony could. The defense tried desperately to cast doubt, but the weight of truth was undeniable. When the judge finally called for the jury's decision, the air was thick with anticipation. The jurors filed back into the courtroom, their faces serious, their expressions heavy. One by one, they delivered their verdict. Guilty. Guilty of a crime that shattered a family and rocked a community. A silence fell over the room, not of surprise, but of solemn understanding. Justice had been served, and it had come in a form few could have predicted, a child's quiet courage and her drawings. Emily's silent voice had spoken louder than any courtroom debate, louder than any adult's protestations. It was her truth that had shifted the course of justice, reminding everyone present of the power one small voice can hold. Outside, a crowd gathered, tears and smiles mingling as the news spread. Emily's mother finally found peace in knowing her story was heard, and a little girl, once silent and alone, became a symbol of hope and resilience. The courtroom may have doubted at first, but in the end, it was the pure honesty of a child's sketch that changed everything. Emily's story reminds us all, sometimes the truth is drawn in silence, and justice listens best when it does. The father's fate was sealed, but more importantly, a community was reminded to look deeper, listen closer, and believe in the voices that often go unheard. And for Emily, it was the beginning of healing, a journey made possible by her bravery and the unwavering power of her silent truth. After the courtroom, drama settled. Emily's life changed in ways no one could have predicted. With her father behind bars, she moved in with her aunt, a kind woman who embraced her with open arms and a warm heart. The quiet little girl who once found comfort only in her drawings was now beginning a new chapter. Therapy sessions became a regular part of Emily's life, not to erase her memories, but to help her make sense of them, to heal the invisible wounds no one else could see. Slowly, day by day, Emily learned to trust again, and through her art, she found her voice, one that spoke louder and clearer than ever before. But Emily's story didn't end in that small suburban home or behind therapy room doors. Her drawings, once dismissed as childish scribbles, began to change the way the world understood children's voices. Therapists, educators, and child advocates used Emily's sketches in workshops and trainings, opening eyes to how children communicate pain and truth through pictures. The girl who spoke with pictures. They called her a quiet hero who taught us all to listen differently. Emily's art became a bridge, a way for other children too scared or unable to speak to share their stories. And as those stories poured in, the hope for change grew stronger. Emily's journey showed that healing isn't about forgetting, but about being heard and understood. Her courage became a beacon of light for families, courts, and communities grappling with the silent struggles of their youngest members. Though the past was painful, Emily's future held promise. Filled with the support, love, and hope she deserved all along. In a world that often overlooks the quietest voices, Emily reminded us that truth can be found in the softest drawings and the smallest hands, and that sometimes it takes just one brave child to change everything. Today, Emily is still growing, still healing, and still inspiring those around her. Her story lives on, not just in court records or news stories, but in the hearts of all who believe in the power of listening with care. Because in Emily's drawings, we find more than lines on paper. We find hope, justice, and the promise of a better tomorrow. Sometimes, the smallest voices carry the loudest truths. Emily's story is a reminder, a call to all of us to listen with our hearts, not just our ears, to look beyond words, beyond noise, and hear the silent messages children share in their own way. It's easy to overlook a child's perspective, to dismiss their stories as fantasy or confusion. But as Emily showed us, those perspectives can hold the key to justice, healing, and change. Every child deserves to be heard, believed, and protected, because in their quiet sketches, their whispered words, or their hesitant glances, lie truths that could alter lives. And sometimes, those truths are the very things we need to see to make the world a better place. So, as this story fades, let us carry with us the lesson it teaches: to never ignore the quiet voice in the corner, the drawing left on a desk, or the tear behind a smile, to listen with patience, to believe with courage, and to always protect the innocence and trust that children place in us. Because when we listen, truly listen, we give them a chance to be heard, to heal, and to hope. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May Emily's courage inspire us all to see, hear, and stand for those who often cannot speak for themselves. And may we never forget, sometimes the smallest voices carry the loudest truths.